If you guys said that this deck wasn't competitive anymore because of the February 5th, 2018 Forbidden List, then I'd probably say you lost your momentum on determining what is the best deck of the format. I mean, that was good? No, that wasn't good? Well, I guess you guys can say that things are swinging into its favor because this deck is still very viable and possibly the best deck of the format. And don't worry, guys, if you're on a budget, we have those budget options for you. I'm TheCaliEffect, and if you guys want to see more videos like this, then destroy that subscribe button. But more importantly, go ahead and pendulum summon that notification bell because we just too strong. Without further ado, I present to you a Pendulum Magician deck profile that can be competitive inside of the February 5th, 2018 format. Alright guys, right before we get into the deck profile, just looking at the Pendulum Magician stats, oh man, it has just about everything you want inside a tier 1 deck. I think genuinely that this deck could possibly be the best deck of the format still, even with the hits of Double Iris Magician and Performapal Skullcrobat Joker. So looking into the deck profile, I'm going to start off by talking about the main deck and the sorcerer monsters, which are quote unquote the boss monsters. 3 copies of Astrograph Sorcerer and 3 copies of Chronograph Sorcerer. These cards are maxed out in the new version of the Pendulum Magician concept because they provide so much depth. Now, I'm going to tell you the main strategy of Pendulum Magician is being able to summon Pendulum monsters to your side of the field without using your normal summon or your Pendulum summon. If you can successfully do that, you are going to be able to make almost any board you like because this deck can almost tutor almost every card in it. And both of these cards help a lot. Both of them have the effect of when a card you control is destroyed, you can special summon them to your side of the field. Furthermore, they also gain an additional effect depending on which monster we're talking about. Astrograph Sorcerer allows you to search a monster that was destroyed previously this turn if that was in your graveyard or extra deck. It doesn't matter what monster as long as it was destroyed during that turn. Chronograph Sorcerer allows you to special summon a monster from your hand. Chronograph Sorcerer by itself fulfills the condition of special summoning 2 monsters that are Pendulum monsters without committing your normal summon or Pendulum summoning, so it's an extraordinary card. Furthermore, their Pendulum effects are not bad. They're actually really good now. They're being able to destroy themselves in the Pendulum self to special summon a monster accordingly. One being Stargazer Magician special summoned by Astrograph Sorcerer, and one being Time Gazer Magician being special summoned by Chronograph Sorcerer. Now these cards are basically cards that you don't want to draw because their effects aren't necessarily great, but they are cards that you want to special summon off of these cards' effects. They work so well in tandem being able to summon 2 Pendulum monsters to your side of the field without committing your normal summon. These cards deserve a worthy max out inside of every Pendulum Magician deck that I can even think of. This strategy is really good, but looking on to the Pendulum Magician monsters, because these cards necessarily complement what we're doing within the strategy, we run 3 copies of Harmonizing Magician. Let me put that right there for you guys. 3 copies of Black Fang Magician, arguably the best Magician card of the deck now. 3 copies of Wisdom Eye Magician. This card's just really saucy at destroying itself and triggering your Chronograph and Astrograph Sorcerer's effect. Now, you guys might be a little disappointed to see this card at first, but I have a good explanation for it. 2 copies of Purple Poison Magician, and you guys are like, only 2 copies? Let me explain before you bite my head off. And then 2 copies of Oath Dragon Magician. Now, starting off with Harmonizing Magician, it's easily a really good card now. Unfortunately, it does make us commit our Pendulum Summon to get the 2 Pendulum monsters that we need, but it allows us for Exceed plays, Synchro plays, and Fusion plays, so it's an extraordinary card. The reason why I say Black Fang Magician is the best now, because it allows us to tutor spellcaster monsters to our side of the field, which is valuable for being able to make Exceed, Link, and Synchro plays all alike. It's an extraordinarily good card. Wisdom Eye Magician allows itself to destroy itself, which again triggers our Chronograph and Astrograph Sorcerers to place any of our Magician monsters to our scale. So it's essentially a reinforcement of the armies for Pendulum scales. Now, Purple Poison Magician is an awesome card. It was actually my favorite, very favorite card in the Pendulum deck before. But coming to realize that Purple Poison Magician wasn't the best card was very hard for me. And the reasoning behind it is the combo with Purple Poison Magician was to boost it off of Time Pendulumograph. That is no longer easy to do, seeing that there's no such thing as Double Iris Magician inside of the TCG. Seeing that Time Pendulumograph wasn't as easy to obtain, Purple Poison Magician should take a backseat to other priorities. And that's where we come in with Oath Dragon Magician. This card is easily the best low scale in the deck, mainly because it allows you to tutor those Pendulum Magician monsters from your extra deck to your hand after you've already used their effects, essentially allowing you to Pendulum summon 3 monsters from your extra deck. And that's why I feel that Oath Dragon is so good. It also combos very well with Chronograph Sorcerer for Exceed 6s, and I show you a really good Exceed 6 card later into this video. So that's it for the Magician monsters. I think it's really solid. I wouldn't change anything about it. Deck's extremely consistent using those Magician monsters. We actually do play a couple of other cards that help us mitigate not having enough high or not having enough low scales and being able to summon Pendulum monsters, fulfilling our conditions. Dark Worm is a must go-to card in this deck. Setting this in the scale immediately gives you scales. It's freaking insane. Also, if it's in your graveyard, you can special summon it to your side of the field by controlling no monsters, and when it's normal summoned or special summoned, it gets to add you the Supreme King Gate 0, another low scale card that's really good. Essentially, Dark Worm can be on its very own a Wavering Guard's target, allowing you to get off your combo. This card is really good. Would I run 3 and 3? Shit, if I had the room, I probably would, because this combo is extremely well. It fills all the conditions. Being able to special summon monsters to our side of the field, field Pendulum scales, and being a low scale, you cannot stop this card. It's too strong. Next is 2 copies of Abyss Actor Curtain Rising, and somebody actually did make a pretty good comment on our video where it was both this deck and Lightsworn going at it. If you guys want to see a deck, or if you guys want to see these 2 decks in action, this and Lightsworn, then go ahead and click on this card. He said that Abyss Actor Curtain Rising was a bad card in multiples because you can only gain its effect once per duel. And I kind of agree, but I completely disagree, and for this reason. There are multiple times where Curtain Riser cannot be activated immediately, where you have to Wavering Eyes it because it's a Pendulum scale, and then there are times where you just want to see it. Running 1 copy isn't the best way to see the card, and running 3 copies might be a little bit of an overkill. 2 copies is perfect because even if it is destroyed before you can activate its effect, you can chain Astrograph Sorcerer to search another copy of it from your deck to your hand, so it is an extraordinarily good card. Coupled with the fact that it is a Pendulum Dark monster, I mean, it's really nasty good inside of this deck. I think that he did put a really good post and made some excellent points at it being a once per duel effect, but at the same time, it's really good to ignore. That's it for the Pendulum monsters. Of course, we run hand traps, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I think this format has slowed down enough where players don't have to run 8 million hand traps, but even more importantly, Pendulum Magician never did well when you ran so many hand traps. It was a deck that was always finessing opponents out of their cards and disciplining opponents for using bad hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is possibly the best hand trap of the deck, and for the people that can't afford Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, because this deck has been pretty cheap until then, go ahead and play Ghost Ogres. It's probably the next best cheap alternative. That's it for the monsters at 30. For the spell cards, we run 3 copies of the best spell card of the deck, Wavering Eyes. Awesome card in here, mainly because it's even more now important than ever. You can use it to destroy your scales, search Astrograph or Chronograph Sorcerer, and then immediately use this effect to summon itself. Wavering Eyes is also really good with Supreme King Dark Worm, because Dark Worm, again, by itself, can make a scale to activate Wavering Eyes. Also, in any Pendulum matchup, if you use Wavering Eyes to destroy 3 Pendulum cards, you're probably going to win that game out of just sheer power of Wavering Eyes. Next is 2 copies of Pot of Desires. We are in 2018. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember when Pot of Desires came out, whether it was 2016 or 2017, but I think the debate should be over if Pot of Desires is a bad card. A lot of people argue that it's a neg 11, neg 12, neg 13. That's not true. The real reason beyond Pot of Desires is that its true value shines in decks that use multiple copies of certain cards that you necessarily don't need to see. Pendulum Magician is one of them. And if I were to tell you if there was a card that searched or basically gained you 2 additional Pendulum cards from your deck to your hand for almost free, you'd guys be like, yeah, I'd play it. Pot of Desires is that card. More importantly, if your opponent Ash Blossom Pot of Desires, you're probably in a good position because then your Electrum might be able to use its effect. A lot of people, or actually some people, might question why I don't just run Pendulum Call. Well, first of all, I can't destroy my scales, and secondly, it's not as good as it used to be. 2 copies of Star Pendulumograph. This card takes a center in this deck, mainly because it rewards me for playing the Pendulum concept and allows me to out advantage my opponent in later game states. More often than not, instead of focusing on my scales, they might have to focus on this card, because if they destroy my scales, this card can search me more scales. Another great thing is that my monsters can't be targeted by spell cards. That's pretty good, and it helps fuel so many combos. Now, I do play 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. The only problem with Duelist Alliance now is that it can't search monsters inside of this specific build. I've seen a lot of players running Luster Pendulum Dragon, and I'm going to give you guys my 2 cents on Luster Pendulum Dragon. I still don't think it's a good card for the Pendulum Magician strategy, especially now more than ever. We run 2 copies of Oath Dragon Magician, 3 copies of Chronograph Sorcerer, 3 copies of Astrograph Sorcerer, and don't forget Supreme King Gate 0 is a very important card to the deck because it is a level 7 monster as well. It can make rank 7 plays. This leads to more copies than more copies of unpendulum summonable monsters when Luster Pen is in your scale. That's completely terrible in my opinion. While Duelist Alliance still does search you a pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, Luster Pendulum doesn't really help the situation. I don't think it's a great card for this strategy. And then lastly is 1 copy of Foolish Burial, because it can send, what's that card? Supreme King Darkworm from your deck to your graveyard. Now again, would I run more copies of Supreme King Darkworm in Gate Zeros? Maybe. It's a really good card. That's it for the spells at 12, which would put this at a 40 card deck. But since I'm running Desires, I like to run 42 cards, mainly because I feel it helps me with the ratios, or banishing my ratios. 2 copies of Time Pendulum Graph, which is arguably probably the most busted card in the deck. It's the reason why I run 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. I want to search this card. Basically, what it allows me to do is disrupt on my opponent's turn, and you guys should already know, in every competitive deck in the existence of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the tier 1 decks always have one thing in common. They provide disruption on your opponent's turn. Look how Zodiac was built. Zodiac Trident. Look how artifacts were built in the hat format. Artifact Moral Attack. Look how Shadows were built. Shadow Fusion. Every deck has some sort of disruption on your opponent's turn, and Time Pendulum Graph is that card for the Pendulum concept. That's it for the main board. Again, I don't think that there was really any expensive cards in this deck outside of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. It's a relatively cheap deck inherently. So on to the extra deck, we're going to start talking about the expensive cards, and of course I'm going to give you guys some budget options along with it. 2 copies of Heavymetalfoes Electrumite. Now this card is saucy. I would not recommend you playing this deck without this card. It is that damn good. Not saying that it isn't playable without it, but it is a really good card. Upon its summon, you can put a card from your deck to your extra deck. That's good. Also, it destroys cards, which triggers your Pendulum Magician's effects. This is the card that we go into because, or this is the card we want to make with those free Pendulum Magician monsters because it helps us set up our scales and search practically any Pendulum monster in the deck to our hand. It can also destroy Pendulum cards to add Pendulum cards from our extra deck to our hand, and we get to draw a card every time our Pendulum card is destroyed. Freaking perfect. 1 copy of Decode Talker. This is the card I normally make after making the Electrumite. It's still really good with the deck. Borolo Dragon, in case I want to steal your bitch. I mean, she ain't gonna come back unless I want her. Don't want her no more. 1 copy of Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. This deck makes this card really well. And the thing that I want to highlight is that when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. So making this card is pretty damn good. And it can negate tax. I mean, Utopia was good for the exact same reason. 1 copy of Naruto. I call him Naruto. Naruto, the Moral Leader, allows you to negate spells and trap cards. I feel it's the best level 6 monster outside of Beatrice. And mainly because it negates spell and trap card monsters, it provides as a soft lock to the opponent. It also has a big body. Time Star Magician to search all of our pendulums. And then Baguska, because Baguska Decode Talker is basically a win condition in this deck. If you can make Baguska Decode Talker, you probably have a pretty full extra deck. So if your opponent can't respond to that, you're going to win the next turn. Tornado Dragon to destroy the opponent's back row, and I'm going to move all of these cards out of the way to get you guys further into the extra deck. Now, one of these Synchro monsters I did want to cut, and I'm probably going to lean towards Bills. Don't get me wrong, Bills is a really good card, but I feel we could have more utility with the rank 4s, and we play 4 Synchro monsters with only 3 tuners. 1 copy of Ignister. This card's still one of the best monsters at manipulating pendulums. Supreme King Dragon Clearwing is an awesome card. Psyframe Lord Omega, I mean, cards really busted. Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon and Supreme King Starving Venom All of these cards are really good. Builds is probably the card that you could drop, but I feel like all the other cards are really essential to the deck. It provides so much presence and utility that it allows you to almost overcome any obstacle. Now, I know I said that there was a budget build, and I'm going to introduce that to you guys right now. Now, I know I said Electrumite was probably the most important card, but let's face it, it's a $50 to $60 card alone. Now, granted, this deck isn't as expensive as I do as my other deck profiles, but still, I can understand that Electrumite isn't the, isn't in everybody's expense. So basically, what you will want to do in this deck is try to produce as many Pendulum monsters as possible, and then lean back on making Decode Talker. Decode Talker plus Bagooska is still a very viable win condition in this format. How would you do that? One would ask. Well, cards like Dragon Ravine, Dragon Shrine, anything to send Dark Worm to the graveyard might be your best bet inside of the main board. Being able to send Dark Worm to special summon itself to gain a Supreme King Gate from your deck to your hand, it's pretty good. It actually fulfills a lot of requirements. After you make the Decode Talker, Pendulum Summoning should be a breeze to get you to Bagooska. And again, I don't think that this would be the best option. You still might want to try to lean heavily on getting at least one copy of Electrumite, but it's still a pretty decent alternative. Another thing that you could do is just run a complete Pendulum Stun route, which will require Amphromage Sloth. This card is freaking nutty, and I don't understand why a lot of people don't play this card. When it's Pendulum summoned to your side of the field, or when it's on your field, neither player can special summon monsters from their extra deck. So unless they play Amphromage, or Morphage, I'm sorry, then they're going to be pretty screwed. It has a 2250 body, so it's not easy to get over. Not too hard to get over, but still not easy to get over. It's just a pretty good card at shutting out the opponent's decks with Electrumite. I really hope these budget options helped you guys, but keep in mind, making Decode Talker Bagooska is probably going to be your best bet, so playing whatever you need to make both of those cards will probably help you in the long run, such as multiple copies of Curtain Raiser, more copies of the Dark Worm combo, and anything that can tutor Pendulum monsters to your side of the field before you commit your normal or Pendulum summon. So that is it for the extra deck, as well as some of the budget options. I actually have a couple of other budget options as I go through the side deck. 3 copies of Mind Crush. This card is probably the best out to evenly matched. At least I feel it's the best out to evenly match because it's so versatile and you can use it for other cards. But more importantly, you activate this and your opponent's probably going to lose the game. 3 copies of Evenly Matched. I do have a budget option for Evenly Matched. If you guys can't afford it, Kaiju Gamseel might be the better option. If you can't afford Gamseel, Sticky Strings might be the better option. But it's really hard to give you guys like a budget build without it being a little pricey. Get those Gamma Seals, guys. It's easy to pay $24 for 3 Gamma Seals than $180 for 3 Evenly Matched. So, I mean, I think I'm doing my part right here. You guys got to pull your own weight. 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Now, there's quite a few options. Instead of Droll and Lockbird, you can actually run the Amphromage Sloth combo I was talking about. Or you can just go ahead and plop in Ghost, or no, you can't plop in that, but I'll talk about that card a little later. Or you can just plop in Dimensional Barriers, which are really good against the Mirror Match. I run Droll and Lock for the Mirror Match because I feel it's more powerful than Ghost Ogre, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. 2 copies of Mistbird, Apex Avian. If for some reason you can't afford Ash Blossoms or you can't afford Ghost Ogres and you just so happen to have Apex Avians laying around, pop those in your main deck instead of Ash Blossom. I still think it's a very powerful card. I actually use this card to deader off hand traps, and yeah, it actually works quite a bit. 2 copies of Chaos Hunter. This card's really good against the Trickstar matchup. It's good going second. You might lose that card in your hand, but you know, you get to stop your opponent from doing all the shenanigans. And if you go first, you can just Pendulum summon it on your side of the field and say, "Fuck you, Trickstars, you suck." And then 1 copy of Raigeki. Now, a card that I was going to talk about is probably going to be heavily relied on in this meta is Gold Reaper and Reno Cherries. If you guys can't afford Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, already have your Metalfoes Electrumites, or at least 1 copy. Ghost Reaper and Reno Cherries is probably excellent in the mirror match because of how dependent Electrumite is on the deck. So be on the lookout not only for this card against you, but this card being played. And if you do see a lot of it being your meta, just play Mistbird, Apex Avian. They can't Reaper you if you have Apex on the field. Just don't play hand traps. I mean, not like that isn't a stretch for this deck. So basically there is like a rock, paper, scissors thing running around with this deck. And I do kind of enjoy that I can provide you guys the outs to every single facet of that. I actually do have a Odd Eyes build. I actually made this upon stumbling upon this deck choice. and it's freaking awesome. I think I already said this, I'm not sure, but go ahead and comment down below in the description if you guys think that I should do that, or do that as a deck profile. Really excited, and give this video a like. I know I probably have said this before, but I have to record this video twice because my camera's a piece of shit, but that's for a totally different story. Again, go ahead and comment down below in the description if you guys want to see an Odd Eyes deck profile. I stumbled upon it making this deck, and it's freaking fantastic. Also, I hope you guys enjoyed the video itself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.